we go. Great. Well, I'll start with the interpretation instructions, Anna, and then I'll pass it back to you. So in the chat, folks will see these in written format. If you are going to be using spoken language interpreter, you're going to go down to the bottom of your screen. You will see an option that says interpretation. It'll have a globe icon. You'll click on that and it'll give you the different channel options. There'll be Amharic and Spanish there. Click on your preferred language, and then using that same menu, you can click mute original audio, and that will silence the English conversation happening, so you can just hear that specific language. If you are going to be accessing an ASL interpreter, we recommend you pinning them. So my screen keeps changing. So you will scroll through the participants and you will go to the top right corner. There will be 3 dots and you will go to pin. There are 2 ASL interpreters, so you will need to do that for both. Please also either raise your hand or put in the chat if you need an ASL interpreter, so we can give you the ability to multi-pin, so you can have both interpreters on the screen as they switch throughout the event. And again, those instructions are in the chat as well. Anna, I'll pass it off to you.
Thank you. As you were noted, I will remind that this town hall candidate forum for North Seattle is being recorded. Hi, I am Ana Moya, Mexican and Native American with Lake City Collective. Lake City Collective is a minority-led, grassroots, nonprofit organization that supports and empowers unrepresented communities across the cultures, lifting their voice and presence by removing barriers for participation. Let's begin with land acknowledgement. As we begin our gathering, we respectfully acknowledge that our event today is taking place on occupied Coast Salish land and on the homelands of the Duwamish people. We pay respect to the Coast Salish elders, past, present, and extended to that respect to their descendants and to all Indigenous people, their language, their culture, their struggles. To acknowledge this land is to recognize its longer history and our brief place in that history, either as a first generation or 10th generation immigrant. It is to recognize these lands and waters and their significance for the peoples who live and continue to live in this region, whose practices and spirituality were and are tied to the land and water. Let me introduce our moderator for this event, Daria Farivar.
Thank you, Anna. Co-moderator, I think you mean. Hi, folks. I'm Daria. I am Iranian and a first-generation American. We're so excited to have you all here tonight. The sequence of events tonight. We are going to start with opening statements from candidates. They'll have a minute for those statements. Then we will go into questions directly from community members. They'll have a minute and a half to respond to those 6 questions. And then we will have a yes or no portion, which is still staying on mute and just giving your thumbs up and thumbs down. There will be 7 questions and we will read off the candidate's response. And then we'll end with closing statements for 1 minute. The questions that were put together for this event came from the Lake City Collective members. These are folks from the immigrant community who have lived here between 3 to 27 years. Throughout this event, we will rotate which candidate goes first. And again, we do recommend you using active speaker mode. We have so many candidates with us tonight we're excited about. So we want to make sure that you can see each one of them as they prepare their response for you. So now I'm going to pass it off to Annie Tran, who's from the Democracy Voucher Program.
Hello, everyone. My name is Annie Tran, and I am the Communications and Outreach Person for the City of Seattle's Democracy Voucher Program. And I'm here to remind you to use your democracy vouchers if you have them already. Seattle residents who are registered voters or previously applied for the program should have received their $4 25 democracy vouchers. And if you have not received them yet, you can request replacements on our website, and I will drop the link in the chat. Vouchers can be used to support candidates running for mayor, city council, and city attorney in this year's election. And you do not need to be a registered voter to use democracy vouchers. If you are a Seattle resident who is over the age of 18 and are a US citizen, US national, or a lawful permanent resident, you can use democracy vouchers and apply for the program. The application is on our website and it's available in 18 languages, and I will also drop the link in the chat. If you have any questions, please feel free to email us or call us. I'll include that information in the chat, and interpreters are also available. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Thank you, Annie. So now we'll begin the candidate forum. We're going to start with opening statements from our candidates, and we'll go in alphabetical order. So we'll start with James Donaldson. You have 1 minute.
My apologies. There is an issue with the counter, with the timer. Just a moment.
Okay. Folks. All right. Again, we'll start with James Donaldson for opening statements for 1 minute. When you're ready.
Great. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. This is James Donaldson, candidate for the office of Mayor of Seattle, 2021. Excuse me. I'm a longtime Seattle resident, about 40 years now. I came here in 1980, so going on my 41st year. And what brought me to Seattle, this great, glorious city of ours, was an opportunity to play with the Seattle Supersonics in the NBA, of where I began my NBA career, which lasted for about 14 years. And even though I played on other cities around the country and lived in other countries around the world, Seattle was always home during those 40 years. I always came back here and remember the glorious, wonderful times that we've had throughout the last decades. And coming at everybody now is just a real concerned Seattle citizen to try to get back on track to those wonderful ways that we used to be 10 or 15 years ago. So I'm running for mayor to bring a real common sense approach to leadership and to being able to get our city back on track again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll go to Colleen Echohawk.
Hi, everyone. It is a delight to be with you. My name is Colleen Echohawk. I'm a daughter of the Pawnee Nation. I lived here in Seattle for 24 years, and I'm very familiar with your neighborhood. I have two siblings who live in Lake City. Lake City has the best Seafair parade. I've enjoyed many times in your restaurants and just love the neighborhood. I live across the freeway in Bitter Lake. I want to tell you that I'm running for mayor because I believe there are some problems in our city that we can solve. My whole career has been about lifting up the voices of the community who have been unheard and underserved. Giving voice to those folks is my mission. I have had to fight my way through entrenched systemic racism to find solutions for my community. And I believe there's a huge amount of unheard voices that are out there. Voices just like mine who are fighting for justice and equity for my community. I have been there. I will listen. My mission as mayor is to bring those voices to the table. I look forward to the conversation, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Justin Farrell.
Good afternoon. It is so delightful to be here with you. My name is Jessin Farrell, and I am running for mayor of Seattle. I grew up in the Lake City neighborhood. I represented Lake City in the state legislature. I'm a former executive director of the Transportation Choices Coalition, and I'm a single mom raising 3 kids, and my 2 of my kids go to Jane Addams Middle School. So I love this community, and I am running for mayor because I believe that we can be better and do better when we unite with a common purpose. We are able to tackle our greatest problems like homelessness, gun violence, and also that delivery of basic services that communities like Lake City need so much, whether it's pedestrian safety or housing affordability. And I look forward to participating today.
Thank you. We'll go to Bruce Harrell.
Good afternoon. My name is Bruce Harrell, and I think I know many of you, and I won't talk a lot about myself because this is not about me, this is about you. But I will say by the record sort of speaks for itself that I was the one that introduced for my committee the Indigenous Peoples Day. I was the sole sponsor of the human rights city legislation, declaring us a human rights city. I was one of the lead negotiators on the minimum wage, fighting for people who need a voice. But that's what's most important as I've continued my political career is what I'm going to do for you now. We're going to open a Seattle Job Center to find new resources for new jobs. We're going to have some of the strongest educational policies. We're going to talk about family values and keeping cultural and family values in a strong community to make sure that we are empowered. And that's been my life story here in Seattle. It's why my grandparents came here, and that's why I'm asking for your support to be the next mayor of Seattle.
Thank you. Andrew Houston.
There we go. Good afternoon and buenas tardes. My name is Andrew Grant Houston. I am a queer, Black, and Latino architect running because there have been many promises made to us in the city as people of color that have not been acted upon and lifted up. And so whether you are a member of Lake City or any of the neighborhoods that make up Lake City, including Victory Heights, Littlebrook, Cedar Park, Olympic Hills, and Meadowbrook, I believe that we need a city that is more accessible, just like today's event. This is actually the first forum that I've been at where I've seen an ASL interpreter. And I am proud to say that my campaign website itself is available in 10 different languages. And we have alt text for all of the images and information that we put out. And so I look forward to continuing the conversation today about how we can make the city that much more accessible for all.
Thank you. We'll go on to Lance Randall. Before we do that, I've been reminded for folks to speak at a relaxed pace for interpretation. Thank you. Lance Randall.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Lance Randall, and I'm running for mayor of Seattle because we have some challenges that we need to overcome. And I am bringing years of experience working on the municipal government level, the state level, and also the federal level, and also experience as an economic development practitioner, which is a unique skill set that's going to be needed to move us forward in the city so that we become more vibrant and sustainable. So I'm bringing a very detailed plan of some very specific things that I want to do to help the city move forward in a more positive manner. And I'm looking forward to the conversation with you and my colleagues as we share our vision for the city of Seattle. And I just want to thank you for this opportunity to participate.
Thank you. And we'll go to Casey Sixkiller.
Well, good afternoon. It's so wonderful to join all of you on this bright, sunny Saturday afternoon. My name is Casey Sixkiller. I was born and raised in Seattle, in fact, not far from where everyone's joining us today. I'm the proud dad of 3 young kids, and I'm the first Indigenous person to serve as deputy mayor of Seattle. I'm running for mayor because I want every family to have a future in our city. Too many families are being left behind. Our small businesses are barely hanging on, and our neighborhoods, who've already endured tremendous change over this past decade, are struggling. This is a defining moment for our city. Recovery is our opportunity to build a stronger Seattle that works for all of us. Because the greatest thing about the future is our opportunity to shape it. I want my kids, all kids, to see positive change is possible, where communities come together to move us all forward. So thank you for hosting today's forum and for inviting me to participate.
Thank you. So now we will move on to our question and answers from the community members. So we're going to start with a question from Habiba, who's from Somalia.
Hi, My name is Habiba, and my question is, North Seattle is an increasingly diverse community. For example, in Lake City, 33% of the population are people of color and 22% are immigrant and refugee. However, most of the areas where we live are considered disadvantaged according to the Race and Social Equity Index. Many live paycheck to paycheck and are behind on rent due to the pandemic. Even though many people have started working again, they will remain in a debt and struggle to pay rent. How would you help relieve this financial burden for both the renters and the owner of a small apartment buildings? To forgive those debts, keep the rent affordable, and prevent evictions. Thank you.
Thank you, Habiba. A reminder that the questions are posted in the chat in case we need another look at them. And this time we'll start with Casey.
Okay, well, despite years of economic opportunity and growth, too many families in Seattle are being left behind. Today, household median income in Seattle is $102,000 per year. But we know nearly a quarter of our families make less than $50,000. That's even less if you're a person of color, an immigrant, or a refugee. If we truly want to make Seattle more equitable, then we need to invest in working families so they are part of it. That's why I'm proposing a guaranteed basic income program to help lift up 16,000 families with $500 per month in supplemental income. No strings attached. That's money in your pocket to help cover the costs of rent, groceries, healthcare, or whatever it is you need to support your families. As deputy mayor, I have supported efforts to extend the eviction moratorium, prevent shutoffs of power and water, and expand programs to help lower income families and small businesses catch up on their utility bills. We need to continue this work
15 seconds.
and support single and small property owners who rely on that income to support their families and stay in their communities.
Thank you. We'll go to James.
James Donaldson, you mean? Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for the question. And being a longtime resident of Seattle, I'm very familiar with all the neighborhoods and all the different communities around Seattle. It reminds me very much of the area in Sacramento, California, where I grew up as a boy, South Sacramento, very diverse, a mix of a lot of lower income and mid-income families all coming together. I was a small business owner for about 28 years myself, being a very entrepreneurial person. I think getting our city to invest more into women and minority-owned businesses is going to be a big key to every one of our neighborhoods, but especially up in the North Seattle, Lake City areas, to ensure that we have ample employment for everybody. And also in regards to the moratorium on evictions and foreclosures, I want to be able to speak to all of our landlords around the city and work out with them some type of repayment plan, a voucher program, for instance, where they would feel more comfortable about getting those monies that they've lost during this pandemic time.
15 seconds.
Especially in exchange for keeping our renters in their places of habitat. So I would hate to see anybody lose their apartments because of something like this, but I think we can find a win-win with the landlords and with the renters all the way through. So that's my plan for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Colleen?
Well, thank you so much for the question. And, I spent the past 7 years working with American Indian Alaska Native people who are experiencing homelessness and fighting for their rights to have beautiful housing. I've been building housing. I'm building housing in Lake City. I recently resigned from the organization to focus on the campaign, but I want to tell you a story. In the early part of the pandemic, about $40 million came into the county and the United Way to support people in their housing, to ensure that evictions were not going to happen. Myself and several others in a coalition of Black and Indigenous and people color-led nonprofits. We found out about it. And we discovered that most of those dollars, the $40 million, were going back to white landlords. To me, that is a significant problem because the money was not going back into the community. We fought as hard as we possibly could to ensure that Black, Indigenous, people of color-led organizations were getting those dollars because we know where those dollars need to go to. We know those community members who are not accessing the city's website because it's not in the right language or it doesn't make sense to them. We know those organizations who are serving the community from a culturally based and culturally understanding the issues of that community. As mayor of the city, I will do the same thing. I will work to extend the eviction moratorium. I will also find federal dollars for rental forgiveness that again goes back into the hands of the community. That's the way that I do my work. That's what I know is effective. And I look forward to partnering with you on that.
Thank you. We'll go to Jessen.
Okay, thank you so much for this question. The bottom line in this city is that we need to raise wages for people and cut family costs. And this issue of rent debt is, to me, one of the core problems that is wrong with city government right now. We need to forgive rent, period. And I led the governor's economic recovery task force. Last summer, I convened financial institutions, landlords, and small business owners because we knew they were struggling in the pandemic, and we created a $50 million fund for Black, Indigenous, and people of color owned businesses because so many of them had been left out of federal programs. We need to do that with renters, landlords, and financial institutions to forgive rent debt. The eviction moratorium has been important, but that debt that is accumulated is by no fault of renters' own, and we need to forgive it. Secondly, to raise family wages, one initiative that I'm very excited about will be to create universal free 0 to 5 childcare and lift up childcare providers. My mother had in-home daycare in her home. Every child care provider should have access to benefits and living wages because it is truly one of the most important jobs in our city.
Thank you. We'll go to Bruce.
Oops. Thank you. So I think you're hearing the same thing about rent debt and eviction prevention and even utility discount assistance to help you. And I have a proven record with respect to those values. I've passed legislation. I've earmarked money in the budget for these kind of things. And I trust everyone that you're listening to has those same values. I don't think that's even a question. But I tell young people and middle-aged people and old people like me that let's not set the bar too low because I still don't want anyone living with trauma, anyone living with financial insecurity. And that's why through my Seattle Job Center, I will figure out what your gifts are, what your talents are, what your interests are, and not only find the job for you, but find the resources available to you. There are a lot of free training, free certification programs all around the city that I will bring to you. I was the one that started the Seattle Promise program where I realized kids could not go to school because they simply didn't have the money. So we structured our program to make it free. Imagine, if you will, a city where the opportunity for growth, for optimization, I know that's a big word, but I just want to say for you to be who you can be. Imagine a city where that's possible, not just being rent insecure. That's the leadership you're going to get from the Herald administration. All boats will rise.
Thank you. Andrew?
So I want to be clear that the next mayor will not take office until January. And so we need to start working on this problem right now. That is something I have been doing with my campaign and also as a member of the Stay Housed, Stay Healthy Coalition, which is pushing for the governor to extend the eviction moratorium until at least the end of the year. It's something where I recognize as someone with over $15,000 in rental debt right now from having lost business during the pandemic, that all of us are struggling. It doesn't matter how successful you were before the pandemic, so many of us have been impacted. And so we need time to recover. The other thing I want to emphasize is that when we provide resources in the future, what I'm focused on is anti-displacement. I don't want to give someone a park. I don't want to give you more resources in your in this disadvantaged community or any other disadvantaged community in Seattle without making sure that you get to stay in your community, because it shouldn't matter what your job is. You should be able to afford to live. The recording paused. Okay, so quickly, I will just mention my developer displacement mitigation fee. So whenever a developer is trying to propose a new development, we will require that they put money into a pot of money that will then go to those current inhabitants to be able to find a new home and be able to afford to move to a place that they want to.
Thank you. Now we'll go to Lance.
Great question. So I'm going to be very specific about the things I want to propose. One thing we need to do is create a situation where the landlord and the tenant can negotiate a repayment schedule, and whatever the difference is, that we would subsidize it through property tax relief to the landlord. That way we can make the landlord whole and also make the tenant whole, and they can stay into their apartments. We also want to provide access to better jobs so that people can improve their personal situation. We will do that through workforce development opportunities to create better jobs, find better jobs, and make sure that they are hired and get these jobs. We also have to do some very unique things so that people can hold on to their money. Like we need to encourage the banks to cash checks that immigrants bring in and not forcing them to go to check cashing places where they have to pay a fee. And we also need to make sure that as they look for housing, that we don't require them to have to pay a background check fee every time they go to look at an apartment. We need to come up with a solution where they pay one fee, and that fee will be good for at least 6 months as they try to look for a place to stay. So we have to be very mindful and strategic as far as helping individuals as they try to make their way and navigate this pandemic.
15 seconds.
Economic challenges. And we can be creative in working with the landlords, the tenants, and the banks to make sure that we create an easier pathway for people to improve their personal financial situation.
Thank you. And thank you, Habiba, for that question. I see that the timer is back on. Cesar, is the timer working now?
Yes, the problem is with the feed, with the video.
Okay. That's fine. We can keep doing it manually too.
Yes, I'm working on that.
Okay, sounds good. So our second question is going to be from Diana, who is Mexican American.
So my question for you is, many Black and Latino families in North Seattle are concerned for the well-being of our children and youth. Mental health has been a concern long before COVID, and we need resources to support the youth. Within the last year, we have lost 4 young community members to gun violence and suicide. We don't want to lose any more. How would you ensure our children and youth have easy access to culturally relevant programs and behaviorable health care? Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. We'll start with Lance this time.
Well, I serve on the board of Southeast Youth and Family Services, and we provide mental health services for the youth in Southeast Seattle. One thing we must do is we must invest more money into our mental health services. We need to make sure that these organizations in the communities that are providing these services to our people of color are well-funded and are able to hire staff that look like the community. And we have to make sure they're paid appropriately so they will stay into the communities to do the work. So I'm looking to invest more into those organizations and increase the spending on mental health in general, and also for drug addiction. And also to make sure that we prop up programs that support our youth and their dreams, like workforce development programs, internships, and what have you. We need to begin to create a pathway for success for our youth, starting in middle school, leading all the way through college. And as we're doing that, we need to make sure that their mental health is also strong as well, so that when they come out, they're successful, viable, and productive citizens for the city of Seattle.
Thank you. We'll go to Casey.
I am the first Indigenous person to serve as Deputy Mayor of Seattle, and I am an enrolled citizen of the Cherokee Nation. I will bring my own life's experiences and those of my community to being mayor. Native communities face higher rates of suicide than all other racial and ethnic groups. Among Native youth, suicide is the second leading cause of death. Not all of these deaths are a result of gun violence, but every one reflects a failure of public policy and the need for more robust strategies and investments to prevent the loss of life among our young people. More work must be done to close the gaps in our mental health system and to increase on-demand access to mental health services. At King County, I worked on efforts like Best Starts for Kids, which provides upstream support for youth and families, and with public health to stand up the Regional Gun Violence Task Force and develop recommendations specifically working to address youth gun violence. As deputy mayor, I've supported investments in community organizations to help disrupt and respond to gun violence. And I've worked to close the opportunity gap for young adults with jobs and education. There's more that we need to do to protect our young people, jobs, education, and just outlets to be kids safely. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now go to James Donaldson.
Thank you. Just unmuting there. Yes, I don't know how many of you all know my personal story, but in 2018, I went through my own series of personal mental challenges myself. I came out of that after 12 months of real deep darkness and anxiety and suicidal ideations, with a whole new vision to start up a nonprofit foundation, which I have started now in 2019, Your Gift of Life Foundation, which is all about mental health awareness and suicide prevention. I'm a board member with NAMI Seattle, soon to be a board member with NAMI Washington, the National Alliance for Mental Illness. I work with a lot of the mental health agencies around town. Communities of color, traditionally and culturally, are very loath to reach out for mental health assistance. It's almost a taboo and a very stigmatized thing that we don't want to acknowledge, but we need to. My foundation is set up to provide scholarship tuition money to students of color going into the mental health professions. And we will pay their full scholarship, their full tuition, to make sure that communities of color in the future have mental health of color to come back and serve those communities. So that's where I'm at with all of that. I've lived through the mental health challenges. I've survived it all, and I'm back to help everybody out with my platform that I have. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. We will now go to Jessen. Nope, I'm sorry, Colleen. I'm sorry.
I took my camera on. I put my camera on. So thank you so much for the question. As Casey mentioned earlier, this is a very important issue for the Native community. And as an executive director of a nonprofit that serves the Native community, I have worked very hard to ensure that we have culturally specific programs to support mental health in the Native community here in Seattle. And I mention the culturally specific programs because I know how diverse Lake City is. We need to resource the community so that the community can offer the resource, offer the support that makes sense for whatever cultural community you've come from. I'm also really proud of the work we have done to support trans youth. We know that some of our youth who are LGBTQ+ need some special support. And I am really proud to have offered that in the past to youth at the Chief Seattle Club. We also need to know that there are some under-resourced programs in Lake City. Specifically, I'm talking about the Lake City Community Center. I can remember voting there when we voted in person. I don't know how many years ago that was, 15 years ago. And even at that point, it was not a great community center. It needed a lot of work. And I went by it recently and saw that it has not changed. I know that there's $22 million, I believe, in the budget, and we haven't even gotten to design yet. As mayor of the city, I would ensure that I would ask that the Lake City Collective lead the process on get that program up and running, because when we have resources for our community in the community centers, we can offer those resources right back and ensure that mental health is supported for everyone in Lake City.
Thank you. Now we'll go to Jessen. Sorry about that.
Thank you so much for this question. It is time for all of us to treat gun violence like the public health crisis that it is. And as mayor, I commit to 0 shootings in our community, 0 suicides by guns in our community. And the reason I can make that commitment is because gun violence is preventable. Gun violence is also intersectional. And that means that we need to be supporting people with economic and social and cultural supports that make them feel loved and cherished and safe for who they are. So as mayor, what that means specifically is partnering with our schools and our community centers and our community nonprofits and other organizations to provide mental health services, to also provide, though, those other pathways to healing. We know that things like arts and sports are also ways to heal from trauma. And finally, it means making sure that we are providing access, again, as I said, to things like stable housing, healthcare, living wage jobs, because when a community is healthy in all the different ways that we can be healthy, gun violence goes down. This is something that we can do, and I am committing to waking up every day to reduce gun violence in our community.
Thank you. We'll go to Bruce.
Thank you. What I love about this question is about our children and our youth. My own children are thriving, doing quite well. But I look at all of the resources, and my wife and I have been in their life, their entire life, all the benefits and privileges they've had. My mother and father had the same. My mother and father were married for 50 years. And so I look at the privileges that I had by virtue of that. I will tell you that that becomes critically important for people that do not have that kind of family support, whether they're in a foster care system or the parents are separated or whatever the situation could be. Realizing it's so critical, what are we going to do about it? Well, that's why I'm introducing, first of all, the Healthcare for All platform to make sure that everyone has basic coverage when they fall through the cracks of the Affordable Care Act or the county system. We're going to introduce youth programs like they've never been done before. I spent years and years coaching kids, being on the basketball court or the football field. I didn't even know what ultimate frisbee was until I started getting involved with my daughter. We're going to have culturally relevant programs because we're going to let communities decide what's best for our
15 seconds.
How can we use our facilities to meet you where you are? And last, mentorship. We're going to introduce you to new relationships, new people. So again, we can feed the gifts that you have such that people can thrive. That's what the Herald candidacy is all about.
Thank you. And we'll go to Andrew.
So thank you for the question, Deanna. And that is actually my mom's name. And it's nice to be reminded during this question, as being raised by a single parent, a Tejana, someone who focused on us having a stable home, myself and my siblings, as well as food on the table. And as long as we had those things, it was okay. We were going to get by. I was going to work really hard in school and be able to be successful. During this pandemic, I realized that I had ADHD. And I now recognize that if I had resources in the past, such as a mental health counselor, even at my school, that I would be able to be even more successful now. And so one of my main focuses in terms of helping our students is to fight for more funding for Seattle Public Schools so that every single school can not just have a career counselor, but a mental health counselor. The other thing I really want to focus on, and that is a part of all of my policy, is climate change. It is something where with my own youth team, that is an embedded part of my campaign, so many of them are fighting so hard, not just for my campaign, but to push the
15
agenda
seconds.
for addressing climate change, because they're afraid that they're not going to have a future. They're not going to have a world where they'll be able to have lives even as good as ours now. And so that's why it's so important to me.
Thank you. I'll now pass it over to Anna. Anna, you're muted.
Thank you. We will now have a community question from Asmera Tigrain from North Ethiopia with an interpreter.
ይሰማል? ልቀጥል? ይሰማል? ኦኬ። እድሉ ስለተሰጠኝ አመሰግናለሁ። አዝመራ እባላለሁ። የመጣሁት ከትግራይ ሰሜናዊ ክፍል ኢትዮጵያ ነው። የምኖረው ሌክ ሲቲ አካባቢ ነው። የኔ ጥያቄ አነሳ ቤተሰቦች ስለ ሁለቱም ደህንነት ያሳስበኛል። መኖሪያ ቤታችንና ቤት አልባ ጎረቤቶቻችን ከዚህ ጉዳይ ጋር ያለን የኑሮ ልምዳችን የተለየ ነው። ምክንያቱም ሁለቱም ማህበረሰቦቻችን በአውሮራ አቬኒው ኖርዝ እና በሌክ ሲቲ ወይ ቀንና ሌሊት በአንድ የከተማ ኮሪደር ውስጥ ይኖራሉ ወይም ንግድ አላቸው። በቅርቡ እርስዎ እንደሚያውቁት ብዙ ዝርፊያዎችና ተኩሶች ጨምሮ በርካታ የወንጀል ሙከራዎችን ተካሂዷል። እናም ስለ ማህበረሰቦቻችን ደህንነት እንጨነቃለን። ነገር ግን ቤተሰቦቻችን ወይም በንግድ ስራዎቻችን ውስጥ የሚፈጥረው ቀጥተኛ ተጽዕኖ ቢኖርም የእነሱ መልካም ኑሮ እኛ ከምናካፍላቸው ከዚህ ከተማ አካባቢ ውስጥ ከቤተሰቦቻችን ደህንነት ጋር የተቆራኘ መሆኑን ሁላችንም እንስማማለን። ጉዳዩን ለመቅረፍ አሁን ያለው ስርዓት እንደማይሰራ ተስማምተናል። እናም ከተመረጡ በኋላ ጎረቤቶቻችን የቤት እጦት ያጋጠማቸውን ፍላጎቶች ለመቅረፍና በእነሱ ላይ ራሳቸውን የሚያደናቅፉ የሚመስሉን ስርዓት ለመቀየር ምን ያደርጋሉ? ጨርሻለሁ። አመሰግናለሁ።
Is the interpreter on the right channel? I don't see the interpreter.
Yes, it's the interpreter needs to read the question in English after the Amharic speaker. Yes. Yes. I'm sorry to interrupt. The other interpreter needs to be on the Amharic channel. And oh yeah, is he? Okay, because I can hear him also interpreting or at the same time. So maybe you need to put him on mute if you have a second device.
Would it be helpful for us to read the question in English?
Okay. Okay.
I can ask it.
Yeah, Anna, why don't you go ahead and read it?
Thanks. Minority families are concerned about the safety and well-being of both our housed and homeless neighbors. Our living experience with this issue is different because both of our communities live, have a business, or stay in the same urban corridors, day and night, neither along Aurora Avenue North or Lake City Way. Recently, as you may know, we have experienced lots of crime, including burglaries and shootings, and are worried about our community's health. But despite the direct impact that causes in our families or businesses, we all agree that their well-being is tied to the well-being of our families in this urban environment that we share with them. We also agree that the current system to address the issue doesn't work. If elected, what will you do to address the needs of our neighbors experiencing homelessness and change the system that instead seems to be benefiting from them?
We'll start with Andrew.
Thank you. So I can talk about this a number of different ways, but I think the first place to start is this idea of the nonprofit industrial complex. Basically, that we have people who come into our existing systems who want to change the system, but then by trying to be a part of it, they end up only reinforcing our current issues. I bring this up because our homelessness crisis has existed since 2015. And so what we are doing currently is not working. What I want to do differently as mayor is I want to use a housing first approach that is focused on being realistic. I use my experience as an architect to know that we need permanently affordable housing, but that if we're going to build it today without any of the red tape or challenges, it's going to take at least 3 years to build. And so that is why I focus on 2,500 tiny homes, because when we give people permanence, when we bring them inside, we're then able to provide them resources, but also build relationships with them, because at the end of the day, they are our neighbors.
Thank you. We'll go to Lance.
So if you go to my website, you will see a proposal that I want to put in place called the Dignity Project. And this project is designed to meet all of the needs of our brothers and sisters who are experiencing homelessness on the streets by creating more safe spaces to get them off the streets. And in these spaces, we will surround them with all the amenities that they need, including service providers that will handle any of their addictions, mental health disorders. And we also have amenities for them to shower. We have food to eat, daycare, everything that they need will be in these communities to keep them off the streets. So the very first thing we have to do is to bring dignity. And then after we bring that dignity by putting them in these places, we need to empower all of our experts in mental health, drug treatment, all the service providers into these communities to begin to help people deal with their addictions so that we can begin to transfer them into permanent housing. Once we do that, we have to make sure that we encourage them to stay off of the streets into these communities and other shelters while we try to help them. And that's why it's important to enforce the ordinances that we already have on the books to keep them off the streets in the tents and the makeshift structures and the RVs. And this is not to penalize them, but it's to encourage them to come to the communities where we can help them. And it also helps us to be able to clean up the streets, make it safer for not only them, but also for the businesses and everybody else who's being impacted.
Thank you. We'll go to Casey.
If there's one thing that we can all agree on, it's our homelessness response is not working. It's not working for homeless people, and the conditions in our parks and on our streets are inhumane. Despite record funding by Seattle and King County, homelessness in Seattle has gotten worse. We cannot fix 20 years of broken systems and failed efforts overnight. But we can do better. It starts with investing in what we know works. That's why my focus will be on creating 3,000 new permanent places for individuals to call home and creating more temporary shelters so we can get more folks inside. We need to see better performance of the existing system. Last year, our shelter system served 3,000 less households than it did the year before, and 40% of those served were not last housed in Seattle. That tells me we have both a systems problem and a regional one. That's why I will be linking funding to performance metrics that meet all our expectations and working regionally to close the service gaps and ensure we're working together. But we also need to be honest with one another. Many encampments are causing harm to the surrounding community and are a threat to public safety and unsafe for campers. An intentional approach that gets folks inside and returns our parks and streets to their intended uses is a win-win. We must lead with compassion and offers of shelter and services, but refusing these offers does not get anyone licensed to continue camping in our parks or causing harm in our community.
Thank you. We'll go to James.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, our homeless issue is the, I guess, so-called 800-pound gorilla in all of our living rooms that none of us can avoid. All of us candidates are going to have to deal with it and come up with meaningful and purposeful solutions to finally get a grip on this situation. Homelessness is a multifaceted issue requiring a variety of different solutions, and there is no one-size-catch-all kind of solution for this. My personal approach is one of intervention. I want to find out what each and every one of our homeless population is going through, who they are, where they came from, what the issues are they might be dealing with, and then have the city be able to provide those services to really help them get off the street. I watched a wonderful program last Sunday, CBS Sunday Morning, and they featured a segment on the show about House First. And this was providing homeless people first with a place to call home. Once you get them off the street, get them in a place that's safe, comfortable, warm, they don't have to worry about their possessions any longer, then you can provide, and then they most likely
15 seconds.
Open to receiving the services that are needed, be it behavioral health, mental health, drug abuse, substance abuse, criminal issues that they have that need to be cleaned up. These are all the things I want our city to be able to provide, and we can do a much better job. I'm also an advocate of tiny home villages. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Colleen.
We have to be clear that we are facing a humanitarian crisis. Tonight, there will be 5,000 plus people sleeping outside in one of the most prosperous cities in the country and in the world. City Hall has failed. This is the biggest problem that we have in our city right now, and this is why I'm running. I know that there are solutions. I have been a proven leader in leading those solutions. I have been working with and alongside our homeless community for many years now. We can do this, but we haven't had the political will to actually get it done. We've already mentioned that almost 6 years ago now, we declared a state of emergency, but we have not treated this like an emergency that it is. I am the candidate that has proven successful results. I have been a part of moving entire encampments into hotel rooms where they can thrive, where they can get the help and support that they need, because we're right, housing first does work. I also want to ask you all to take a look at my website. We have a 22-point plan to move everyone who's outside inside in 14 months. This is a nuts and bolts plan. It's not a theoretical idea. It's not a good idea, and the plan is there. We have to also remember that we have to build permanent housing. I've been building affordable housing for the past 4 years. I'm a board member at the National Low Income Housing Coalition, and I will bring the expertise that we need to serve these beautiful people who are suffering outside, and also our whole community suffers. So we have to do more. We have to treat this like the emergency it is, and I can't wait to get in there and do it.
Thank you. We'll go to Jessen.
Thank you so much for this question and the compassionate framing of the question, which is to say that every single person in our community, housed, unhoused, small business owner, child, elder, deserves to feel safe in our community. And the amazing thing in this moment at listening to all of the other candidates is that there is a great deal of consensus around the policies that help people find stable housing. It is, more interim housing, more permanent supportive housing, coupled with behavioral and mental health support services, coupled with caseworkers from trusted organizations that are able to deliver culturally relevant and appropriate services. We know those are the things that work. So why haven't they? I would argue it is because of finger pointing and infighting and a lack of leadership. And I commit to you, and you can look at my track record on delivering big investments on transportation, on education for Northeast Seattle and other communities across the state, that the buck stops with me. I will take responsibility for helping people get inside and helping all neighbors feel safe. This is a moment where we need all hands on deck.
15 seconds.
We need bridge building, not infighting. We need actions, not words. And I want to be that mayor.
Thank you. We'll go to Bruce.
Thank you. So why is there so much anger, discontentment in our city right now? And I would suggest it's because we see so many contradictions in a city that is so wealthy. King County and Snohomish County are among the wealthiest counties in the country. In a city where we have two of the richest men in the world, worth 186 billion, yet we can't afford to feed the hungry or house the unhoused. The youth see these contradictions and they're filled with anger. And as Jessen said, no one's taking responsibility, finger pointing. Not me as the mayor. My leadership has always been to take ownership of an issue. That's what you will see. I must tell you that if I have to leave this call early, it's because I'm supposed to be two places at one time. And so I may not be here for the full forum. But I'll tell you, under my plan, not only will we look at the taxes that are necessary, that's why I called on the new money that came in, 116 million of it. I called for the majority to go to the homelessness. And we will also tap into all of those resources in this city.
15 seconds.
I have a history of raising, with my wife, hundreds of millions of dollars in our effort when she was the CEO of United Way. And so what I want to impress upon you is that I'll be your strongest champion to find us the resources we need to thrive. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Back to you, Anna.
Thank you. We have our fourth question from Guadalupe from Mexico with the Spanish interpretation. If there's any trouble, I will answer it in English.
Okay. Dice, la gente de color en nuestra área está muy dispersa, pero estamos aquí y seguido sentimos nuestras voces y preocupaciones son ignoradas. Si usted fuera electo, ¿cómo se involucraría con nosotros, incluyendo adultos mayores de bajos ingresos y personas con discapacidades que no son incluidas? No pueden asistir a las juntas, no tienen acceso o no saben usar la tecnología o no tienen un internet confiable. ¿Cuál es su plan para escuchar, involucrarse y responder a nuestras necesidades?
Was everyone able to hear the interpreter?
No.
Okay. People of color in our area are very spread out, but we are here, and we often feel that our voices and concerns are ignored. If you are elected, how will you engage with us, including low-income seniors and persons with disabilities who are often not included, can't come to meetings, do not have access, or don't know how to use the technology, or don't have reliable internet? What is your plan to listen, engage, and respond to our needs?
We'll start with Bruce.
So when I was at the University of Washington, my roommate was a Somali gentleman named Rashid Muhammad, who was one of the first Somalis here in the Seattle, who had a vision of having not only East African population here, but West African population, many people from the continent of Africa here. But I would watch during those times how he was excluded from many meetings and many activities at school. I'm biracial, and I know what being excluded means, not at the table. And that's why I was the sole sponsor of the Race and Social Justice initiative at the City of Seattle, to make sure through an equity lens that everyone is at the table who needs to be at the table and policies affect them. Under the Harrell administration, we're going to take it up a few notches. We will be in the communities, bringing the table to the communities to make sure their voices are heard. I was the one that championed and received a national award for what became as Internet Essentials through one carrier. That was free or significantly reduced high-speed internet students to students on free and reduced lunch. I noticed how many kids that didn't have the means could not get high-speed internet access. And so I fought and received a national award for that work. And so I'm asking you to help me get elected. Let me be crystal clear on this, that I need the help, because all these things I'm going to do for you is going to take an army of people. And we have that, but we could always use more. And I'm saying this because I may not be able to be on the back end of this forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we will go to Andrew.
I'm sorry for the interruption. The Amharic channel is not working. So we will ask the interpreters to please make sure that you are in the Amharic channel while you're interpreting. So are both of our Amharic interpreters in the Amharic channel? And also to make sure that you are not on mute. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
Is the interpretation working now? Are we good to continue?
Yes, I can hear the interpretation now. Thank you.
Great. All right, Andrew.
Muchísimas gracias por la pregunta. I look at this a number of different ways, and that is, we need to expand our Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs to include non-English, because it doesn't matter whether you have citizenship or not. We are a city that speaks over 100 different languages. And so we need to increase the ability for anyone speaking any language to be able to access resources directly through any of our departments. One of the other things I want to focus on is meeting people where they are. It's not just about bringing people to the table, it's actually about building new tables, because if the old tables worked, if the Seattle process worked, we would not be in as bad of a place as we are. And so for me, that means having office hours, but actually going to districts, going out to community centers and engaging with people. The other part of that is that I am actually someone who does not drive. And so I rely on our buses and I rely on walking. And I know that for many places, especially in North Seattle, we are lacking sidewalks. And so if we're talking about true accessibility, it's also about the infrastructure that we need to build right now so that people are able to get all their daily needs easily across the city.
Thank you. Go to Lance.
Thank you. When I worked for a U.S. congressman, one of the most important parts of our job was to respond to the constituents. And the way that we did that, we had the best constituent services operations on Capitol Hill. And that requires us setting up in the mayor's office a constituent services division where we respond directly to constituents when they call in, when they text, when they send emails. We need to respond back to them, and we need to respond back to them very quickly. Not just to give them an answer of we got your message and then they don't hear back from us again. We need to make sure that we build cases and stick with the issue until we solve the problem. The other thing that we're going to have to do is, since the legislature has pretty much said we can begin to explore broadband, we need to begin to take the steps in order to begin to build out this process. It's going to take some time, but now we have to go ahead to begin to look at municipal broadband, and we need to take advantage of the opportunity. Also, we want to hold regular town hall meetings at senior citizen locations, affordable housing complexes, where we go to the people and use their community rooms to talk to them and hear from them and solve their problems. And also, we will have open houses at the mayor's office where people can actually come in, schedule time to spend time with me, and we have conversations. And then the last thing that I want to do, I'm going to set aside a portion of my day, every day, maybe an hour at the end of the day, or maybe around lunchtime, where I will be making calls to people myself. I mean, we're doing it now as we campaign to reach out to people. I think we need to continue to do that. Let's just call people randomly. This is the mayor's office. We're just reaching out to you proactively to talk to you and hear if you have any issues. So I'm going to be very accessible to the voters.
Thank you. We'll go to Casey.
Well, thank you so much for this question. It really speaks very much to me and what I've spent my life doing. I've spent my life fighting to be in the room where decisions impacting my community are being made and helping others get to that decision-making table as well. As a person of color, I have experienced racism firsthand, and I've spent my career working to dismantle those systems and policies that perpetuate inequality. Creating a Seattle that is equitable and just requires us to remove excuses used by others to work in and with communities to design solutions that work for them. And one of the simplest ways to do that is to get out of City Hall and come directly to you, to meet with your community where it makes sense and when it makes sense for you, and not just show up by yourself. The greatest thing about being mayor is you've got the entire executive branch to bring with you. And I think that's what this is about. You know, if we want to come together and move our entire city together, but also make sure we're responding to the individual needs of our neighborhoods and all of the communities that make up the one community of Seattle, we've got to be mobile. We have to be accessible. We have to be accountable and transparent. And I think one of the best ways we do that is create every opportunity for conversation, for working together, and making sure that we are landing on those things that we all agree on so we can move forward.
Thank you. We'll go to James.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. I venture to say I probably have the most international experience of anybody on this forum today. My professional basketball career took me to wonderful countries in Europe. I played 6 years in Europe altogether, 2 years in Spain, 2 years in Greece, 2 years in Italy. I learned Spanish, Greek, and Italian. I spent a great portion of the last 10 years in mainland China, doing education programs, study abroad programs, and basketball training. I'm learning Mandarin Chinese now, so I speak 4 or 5 different languages. I've always been very, very comfortable in every culture, every demographic around our city. People seem to welcome me, and I, of course, welcome them. I want to be a mayor who's very, very proactive, who is always going to our communities, reaching out to them to see what they need. And they need to see me also as the mayor. I want to do 3 things every single day. One of 3 things. One is either go to a elementary, middle school, or high school and let our children see me as mayor and reassure them that they can be anything they want to be. I want to go to a senior assisted living home every afternoon and reassure our seniors that this city is in great hands, and a community evening advisory council meeting as well in all the neighborhoods. Our neighbors need to see our mayor at 7 feet tall. You can't miss me. So they'll see me all over town. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll go to Colleen.
Thank you so much for the question. You know, I have a very clear memory of walking up to City Hall one day and talking to someone in the Office of Housing and saying, hey, listen, my community needs housing. We are suffering. There are people, thousands of people who don't have homes, babies, children. And I talked to this person and said, I have this idea. I know about this building. I want to build housing. And they laughed in my face. And they said, you're too small. You don't know what you're doing. You don't have enough resources and money. And those are, I've had many experiences like those. And those are the experiences that I will ensure that communities of color do not experience in an ECOHOC administration. An ECOHOC administration will be welcoming, warm, and hospitable. We will tear down the gatekeeping together. We will ensure that all community members feel that they can come to City Hall, that City Hall belongs to them and be a part of the decision making. One of the ways that we will do this is by having an elder council. I grew up with the teachings that elders are the ones who should be offering wisdom and helping provide leadership. So I will ask for representatives from all around the city to be a part of an elder council, and I will go to them,
15
not
seconds.
ask them to come to City Hall. Finally, I want to say that we have to explore universal broadband. One of the things that we saw through the pandemic is that it was not accessible and many community members suffered. I'm a person that shows up. I'm a community member. I love being with people and I cannot wait to bring everyone into City Hall. We're gonna have huge parties and have a great time because it's time to celebrate. We've gone through some hard things.
Thank you. Now we'll go to Jessen.
Okay, you know, I think first and foremost, you are the experts on your own lives, and that as we are designing policies, it is so important that you are weighing in and co-creating those policies because the policies will ultimately be so much better. And as mayor, I commit to coming to you. That is absolutely the best part of the job, getting to be with the people in our community. And I commit to coming to you and to listening. To making sure that we have translators, that we are able to create opportunities to talk and listen at the appropriate times of day. And again, early in the process, because that co-creation needs to be throughout the process and decision making. And when I was chair of the governor's task force, that is exactly what we did. We focused on listening to Black and Indigenous and people of color owned businesses across Washington state. And we heard loud and clear that business owners were being left out of federal pandemic funding. And so we created a loan fund with trusted messengers in a variety of languages to help business owners get access to the help that they needed. And I commit to continuing to come to you as mayor.
Thank you. We'll go to our fifth question, which will be asked by Ying, who is from China.
Hello, everyone. So my question is, we are worried about the arrival of the light rail in North Seattle. Buildings have been sold, rent has increased, and families who have lived in the neighborhood for 20 years or more have been pushed out. We saw in South Seattle that the arrival of the light rail led to displacement and gentrification. Knowing that a similar outcome could occur in North Seattle, how would you help prevent it and ensure our communities are not forced to leave? Thank you.
Thank you, Ying. We will start with, oh, it's out of order. We'll start with Jessen.
Thank you so much for this question. This is one of the most important questions facing our city right now. Displacement in Northeast Seattle and North Seattle is happening right now. When I was a legislator, there were actually fewer and fewer schools receiving poverty assistance because families who needed that assistance were being priced out of the city. This is something that we need to address starting on day one. And I am committed to doing that. And fundamentally, the first piece is to work with community members to identify which buildings need to be saved, to identify what kinds of stable rent policies need to be put in place. And in the longer term, I am creating a housing plan that will have 70,000 affordable homes in Seattle with new pathways to ownership so that people have long-term stability. Homeowners and renters deserve long-term stability in our community. And I will work with you, I will work with Sound Transit, and we will, again, work with a deep urgency because this has been happening for years, and we have to make sure that it is not too late for families who continue to live here. This has to be a city for anyone who wants to live here to be able to live here. And so I am committed to solving the affordability crisis, again, with both regional partners, community partners, and bringing to bear regional, state, federal, and local and public and private resources to get in front of this. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will go to Bruce, if Bruce is still here.
Great. I'm trying to hold on. Quick story. So about 20 years ago, when light rail hit South Seattle, and many of us said, whoa, it's going to be above grade. It's going to put small businesses, it's going to displace them. It's going to displace our culturally diverse communities and housing. So what did I do? I rallied around community. We had many forums and events. We got $50 million of a mitigation fund. I became their lawyer. I incorporated them. I became an executive director for this organization known as the Rainier Valley Community Development Fund. And we made sure we fought for those businesses and those homeowners and those renters to be in our area. You're going to see the same kind of activity on the north end. If I am mayor, I will lead the charge in making sure we preserve that which is good, that which is part of our community. We have to. So people are going to say they're going to do that. I've done it. And so I'll certainly do it in the future. And I have a bigger pulpit from mayor. So this is the work, this is the kind of work I've done my entire life. That's why I'm asking many of you listening, you're sacrificing a great day today to be on this forum. And so I need your help to make all of this materialize. And we lead with a spirit of love and humility. So I hope that you can join our efforts. bruceforseattle.com is our website. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll go to Andrew.
So this is a really important question for me because I recognize the need to provide, again, services and resources like light rail in order to address the climate crisis. But we also need to make sure that our communities and your community can stay and actually benefit from those new resources. One of the things I want to point out is that our current urban village strategy, in terms of how we develop the city, has already entrenched and forced development to happen where it does. That's why you only see new apartment buildings in very specific parts of Lake City, but not in Laurelhurst, not in Blue Ridge, not in most of Wallingford. And so I'm looking to eliminate the apartment ban so that our new development, our new growth, which we need more housing for everyone, can be spread out across the city. And that is how we make sure that we provide enough space for everyone. But I also recognize that that's not going to be enough to be equitable in terms of new growth. And so that is why I have the developer displacement fee, which is also focused so that places where there are just one house or two houses are looked at as more attractive versus existing apartment buildings. And so we're only displacing potentially a few people, but then providing them funds so that they can find their new home.
Thank you. Looks like the timer's working. I'll keep doing it manually just in case. And now, oh gosh, we are on to Lance.
That's a great question, and it is a very important issue. One of the things we have to realize is that our zoning policies are not inclusive enough. And we have to go back and take a look at the MHA and our zoning policies as a whole to make sure that they are more inclusive so that communities can also develop their own properties. One of the things we have to make sure of is that those who own their property in their communities, if they're upzoned, they should have the opportunity to be able to be their own developers and not have to sell their property to developers who come into the community. We need to give them more access to funding for pre-development costs and construction costs so that they can build and develop their own property, which will allow them to create wealth and will avoid displacement. In order to do that, we're going to have to make the zoning policies more inclusive and be fair and equitable across the city. As mayor, I'm committed to do that. There are some people who had an opportunity to take a look at it since it was passed, but have been very reluctant. And to me, that's a failure on our leadership's part to just ignore the fact that people are being displaced and not given an opportunity to develop. Under my watch, we're going to go ahead and make necessary changes in our zoning policy. We're going to create more opportunities for different housing options, and we're going to make sure that communities are more involved in the decision-making process and policy development. As mayor of Seattle, I'm committed to make that happen, to bring equity to all the communities that want to maintain a presence in their community.
Thank you. We'll go to Casey.
You know, a strong transportation network fuels thriving cities. Sidewalks, reliable and frequent transit service and connections, a complete bike network and roadways and bridges that are maintained are critical to Seattle's livability and economy. These investments help us move toward a vision where every neighborhood is accessible, has a range of housing choices, and includes parks, libraries, schools, stores, childcare, and restaurants. But these investments have been lacking for generations, especially for communities of color. I want neighborhoods to thrive no matter the color of your skin or the zip code you live in. And to make that a reality, we need to do a few things. One, by stabilizing working families who are often one paycheck away from becoming displaced, which is why I've proposed a guaranteed income program so all families can build a future here. We need to increase housing choices through rezones and incentives to quickly deliver and lower the cost of multifamily housing. And importantly, we need to expand things that we've piloted at the city around community preference to prevent displacement when new housing is created and to help families age in place. Look, we need these transportation investments to work for everyone and for communities, especially communities who have been left out, and not work against them. I'm committed to making this right and working with you to advance solutions that work for your community.
Thank you. We'll go to James.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. A lot of good thoughts around the forum today. I really enjoy the conversation so far. I do believe that when all these various entities are coming together to put together like a light rail station, what's happening in North Seattle right now at Northgate, all these entities really need to be able to fund some sort of, I like Bruce Harrell's idea of a mitigation fund, where that money can now be given to the displaced families who are having to sell their homes. There's so much more than just having to sell a home and go out and buy another one. I mean, you're leaving your community, you're leaving your family, your friends, your neighbors, you've been around forever. That's a big, big price for anybody to pay that can't be calculated solely monetarily. But they do need to be compensated handsomely, I think, in order to be able to and willing to give up the homes that they've lived in for so long. These developers, these contractors, these builders, they keep coming through. And I don't think they had the regard for any of us in our communities.
15 seconds.
And so I want to make sure as mayor that we can work with all these different entities, bring them all together, and speaking of equity, make sure the community members are around the table as well from the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Colleen.
Thank you so much for the question. And I just want to be really clear that despite the efforts of previous council members and mayors, what has happened in South Seattle is a tragedy. We have so many of our Black and brown neighbors who do not live in the South End anymore because of gentrification, because of what you're worried about of light rail coming in. I earlier today was at the Bite of Black Business, talked to many business owners at that event. None of them lived in Seattle. None of them. They were coming from Tacoma and Renton and Skyway. And so we have to be incredibly cognizant about what is about to happen in North Seattle. I've been very aware of this for a while. In my previous job at the Chief Seattle Club that I left just a few weeks ago, we are building housing on the North Seattle Community College campus. And we are going to be using tools like affirmative marketing and community preference policies that ensure that our communities who live in this city and in North Seattle can stay there. We also will create, in the Echo Hawk administration, we will create a commission that is focused on stopping the gentrification that continues to push out our brown and Black relatives. Finally, I'll say that I will have conversations and be in partnership with the Seattle Kraken. They're an incredible big organization about to pour in to North Seattle, and we have to have a mayor that talks to them and ensures that they are following our vision. I want to invite them in to the story of justice and equity that we're creating together. Thank you so much. I'm incredibly passionate about this one. We have to do better. We have to learn from the past.
Thank you. Thank you. Now for our sixth and final community question, we're going to go to Maria, who is a business owner.
Hello, everyone. Minority-owned business have struggled during the pandemic and face barriers to accessing, funds that will help relieve financial burdens. How would you support and build relationships with ethnic businesses in North Seattle so that they can get the same level of support, financial literacy, and resources as white businesses?
And we'll start with Colleen.
Great. Well, this is an important one for me as well. I am a small business owner myself. I grew up in small business, and I understand so much the burden that is on us to take care of our families through this small business. So as mayor of this city, the first thing I want to do around small business is meet with the neighborhoods and ask you, what is it exactly that you want and need? You know, I have a few friends who are, English is not their first language and they own small business. I asked some of them, I'm like, did you get PPP? No, they didn't get PPP. No one had done the outreach. Did you get a small grant from the Office of Economic Development? No, because no one had gone out and done the outreach. As mayor of the city, I will be incredibly aware of our minority-owned businesses and make sure that you get the resources, that you understand them, that they are accessible, truly accessible. We know that the Office of Economic Development has some work to do. They are, I don't believe, are doing as good of a job as they can to ensure that there is a kind of access and also ensuring that there is an equitable response that needs to happen for our small businesses. So an Echo Hawk administration will be asking you what you need and then responding and ensuring that our small business community that are owned by Black and Indigenous and people of color are fully supported. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll go to Jessen.
Okay, thank you so much for this question. Our small businesses are the heart and soul of our city, and I know that it has been such a struggle over these last hard months of the pandemic. I mentioned that I was the chair of the governor's economic recovery task force, and I spent the summer and fall listening to small business owners, Black, Indigenous, other people of color owned small businesses, and we heard so many of the same themes. Access to capital, technical support, communications, having a network of trusted messengers who are able to make sure that business owners who are so busy are aware of the programs that are available, and then that technical support to be able to help access it. Being able to have access to banking relationships. So many BIPOC owned businesses don't have traditional banking relationships, and that leaves them out of programs. So as mayor, with urgency, I would address all of those things: access to capital, banking relationships. You know, one of the things that I think is just such a failure of this moment is the city created, small grants, but we knew that businesses that were having to close because of the pandemic were going to be needing so much more. Those $10,000 grants should have been $100,000. And I commit to working with you to make sure that you have what you need to keep your small business thriving and open. Thank you.
Thank you. And is Bruce still here?
Yes,
Still here? Great.
I am trying to hold on. So, you know, I got to tell you that the voters, I think, will look very, very closely at what a person's done, how they've lived their life. And decades ago, before I was elected, I was the lawyer for a group called CEDA, Central City Economic Development Association, strictly on earth to support small minority-owned businesses. I also began an organization called Performance First, same scope of work for the Puget Sound Regional Council. Many leaders at the Tabor 100, including its executive director, Ollie Garrett, are supporting my candidacy because of this work for small minority businesses. So what are we going to do? We're going to see the strongest business-to-business relationships amongst each other. We're going to make sure that the diversity, supplier, and use of minority businesses from all counties, from the city, the county, and the state. By the way, my wife is spearheading this work at the University of Washington. You're going to see a new level of support to be able to get the contracts and the services that we want. You're going to see access to capital, which we know is an impediment. Where you're going to see assistance in strategic planning. So this is the work that I've been doing for 30 years.
15 seconds.
I use the word imagine a lot when I run, because I say you have to imagine what it could be like to have a mayor with that kind of background supporting you, because we've never had that before. So I have to close by saying I hope you'll support my candidacy, and thank you so much for allowing us to share a few thoughts with you. It's been a wonderful forum, and I'm very proud to debate with my colleagues.
Thank you. Go to Andrew.
So I have a lot of plans, and I don't want to speak too quickly for the interpreter. But what I want to focus on is the fact that I am not interested in making a lot of empty, open promises. That when you look at all of my proposals that are on my website, I make it extremely clear as to every single step we are going to take so that these things actually happen. I recognize myself as someone who has my own architecture practice, being a minority-owned business, that currently we do not have enough systems in place in order to not just provide the resources that people need, but also even just communicate that they exist in the first place. That is why I'm so focused on accessibility, not just when I enter into office, but also currently in my campaign. And that means expanding things like language access so that you can actually meet with someone who speaks your language in order to get the resources that you need, as well as my interest in creating a night mayor or a deputy mayor that is focused on that third shift. So people who operate and work during midnight to 8 a.m. because they should have access to equal opportunity as well.
Thank you. We'll go to Lance.
Thank you. When I worked for the Seattle Office of Economic Development for 8 years, it was my responsibility to work with all businesses all over the city to make sure that they were thriving and being successful. And I've been very successful in working with minority businesses, Black-owned businesses, helping them expand their operations and create wealth. While we have gotten a lot of assistance from the federal government, we have enough wealth in the city where we can create our own local stimulus program to give out grant dollars. And I want to partner with our business community to create upwards of a $1.2 billion grant program to provide $100,000 to 10,000 businesses who've been displaced. In addition, what I want to do is put together a marketing program with our neighborhood business associations where they provide marketing technical assistance. We also want to present opportunities for people to own commercial space by condominiumizing some of these spaces where they can buy the space and own it and never have to be displaced. Provide property tax incentives for landlords who do tenant improvements and give free rent. We want to improve the contracting inclusion plan with the City of Seattle to make sure that minority firms get an opportunity to get city contracts. The ultimate goal is to put measures in place, and I have experience in doing this, so that Black-owned, brown-owned businesses, minority businesses, woman-owned businesses, all businesses can have an opportunity to build their businesses and create wealth.
Thank you. We'll go to Casey.
Well, this question really speaks to me as well. I actually also was a small business owner for a long time, and working with tribes and cities across the country to help them solve problems, address issues in their communities. But as a small business owner, you learn really quickly just how hard it is to navigate the system, to open a bank account, to get your license, and then the fear I think you have every month of when your rent is due, and those questions about whether or not you'd take the risk to grow your business, add employees and benefits, and all of those things. It's a very stressful thing to be a small business owner, and I can't imagine how hard it has been for our small businesses this past year. I know in talking with small businesses across our city, too many of them are barely hanging on. So we got to do more right now to support our small businesses so they move from survival to hiring and thriving again. And we do that by investing directly in them and building on those programs that we've piloted and over this past year to help them create opportunities to adjust their business and bring customers back in. Our small businesses are the fuel of our economy, and we've got to be there for them the same way they've been there for us over the past year.
Thank you. And James?
Yes, as a former small business owner myself, with a business that had several locations, I had a location actually in the central area of Seattle on 22nd and Jackson in the Welch Plaza building for about 5 years. Physical therapy, sports medicine is what we did, bringing professional services to underserved communities, especially. This location in Seattle in particular was really my passion. I love being there. I love being part of the community and really being an advocate for women and minority-owned businesses. I've belonged to several associations throughout the years, the Northwest Business Council, Tabor 100, and all the rest of them that have been around doing things. I was also part of the Ethnic Chamber of Commerce, monthly webinars that we had all through the pandemic shutdown, reaching out to our smaller ethnic-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, to help them with PPE grants and to give them information. I realize now, during the end, we had to do it virtually, but in the future, we have to go to them directly, face-to-face, person-to-person, to their places of operation, to really let them know about the great opportunities that are
15
available.
seconds.
Seattle has never been a very business-friendly type city. This is the reason we ran 40,000 jobs over to Bellevue from Amazon. We could use those jobs here in Seattle. We need to be more supportive and more business-friendly.
Thank you. That will conclude our questions directly from community members. Now we're going to move into our yes/no questions. So if I could get all of the candidates to turn on their cameras for us, rather than having each one of you come off mute, to make things more efficient, what we're going to do is have Anna ask the question, and I will read off what everyone has chosen, yes or no. After the question is read by Anna, Anna is also going to count down from 3, and when we reach 1, we would like to see your thumbs up or down. So let's see, do I see Justin, Jay, 1, 2, 3, 5. So no, it keeps moving. Let me change my view. Okay. All right, Anna, take it away.
The first question. The Little Brook neighborhood in Lake City is the most diverse and dense in North Seattle. Community members here have expressed the need for a cultural center in their own neighborhood, led by our own communities, with programs for kids and teens, elders, and adults. How would you work with us to make this community vision a reality?
3, 2, 1.
Okay.
All right. James, I believe, put a thumbs up.
I'm trying to understand the rules of so we give a thumbs up, thumbs down. That wasn't really a thumbs up, thumbs down question. answer kind of thing. What do you think?
Please do your best to just give a thumbs up or thumbs down, all right?
Okay. So
I believe just what happened is Anna said how instead of just would.
Yes. Yeah,
My
there you go.
bad, sorry.
No worries.
That's right. Yeah, that's what threw me.
All right, we'll try it again. 3,
Okay.
2, 1. All right, I got a thumbs up from James. I got a thumbs up from Jessen, thumbs up from Andrew, thumbs up from Casey, thumbs up from Colleen, and thumbs up from Lance. And I think Bruce has left now. That's everyone. Great.
Next question. We believe an investment in culturally responsive and community-led programs will increase the safety of our communities. Do you promise to not build the previously planned police station in Aurora and instead invest in programs to make communities disproportionately affected by policing feel safer?
3, 2, 1. Lance has a thumbs up, Colleen has a thumbs up, Casey has a thumbs up, Andrew thumbs up, Jessen thumbs up, and James thumbs up.
Thank you. Do you commit to keeping Seattle a sanctuary city and include undocumented folks in all programs and relief efforts? 3, 2, 1.
All right, we have thumbs up from James, Andrew, Jessen, Casey, Colleen, thumbs down from Lance.
In our experience, the Race and Social Justice Initiative hasn't been implemented in every department. Will you commit to appointing someone to oversee that this initiative is meaningfully implemented in every department and city programs? 3, 2, 1.
We have thumbs up from Colleen, Casey, Jessen, Andrew, James, and Lance.
Pedestrian infrastructure has been prioritized and concentrated in wealthy white neighborhoods. Will you shift the focus and improve pedestrian infrastructure in areas where low-income renters and people of color live? 3, 2, 1.
We have thumbs up from all candidates.
There you go. According to the recently adopted Green New Deal resolution, the city of Seattle has a goal to eliminate greenhouse gases emissions by 2030. Considering the population disproportionately impacts people of color, can you commit to focusing those efforts in the most urban and densest areas where we live? 3, 2, 1.
Thumbs up from all candidates.
Okay. There is skepticism in our communities around whether our elected officials will live up to their promises once elected. Do you promise to meet with us within 30 days after you are elected to work on these issues? 3, 2, 1.
And we have thumbs up from all candidates. Thank you so much. I believe that is our last yes or no question, right, Anna?
Yes, it is.
Great. So now we're going to move into the final section of this candidate forum, which are closing statements. Let me double check the order. I believe James was last. So James, you're going to start. We'll have 1 minute closing statements.
Thank you very much. You know, in my 40 years here in Seattle, I recall a time when Seattle was referred to as the crown jewel of the Pacific Northwest, the Emerald City. Great times in the 80s and the 90s, the new millennial, the 2000s. The last half a dozen years or so, though, the trajectory of Seattle has been in a direction that I have not been very happy with. And most of the voters around Seattle are not happy with either. We're looking at a person who can bring in new ideas, a new vision, problem solving, compassion, and all those things to the mix, who can help lead Seattle into a much brighter future.
15 seconds.
So I want to be that mayor for Seattle, someone who can go out and help us to live up to our high expectations and to our glorious past. We can do it. We can all do it together. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. And oh no, I've lost my order. I believe next we have Colleen.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you so much. I just love this neighborhood. I love the opportunity to get to share with you a little bit of my heart and vision for Seattle. I am running because this is time for Seattle to have a transformational change in how we police, change in how we respond to the climate crisis, and especially change in how we deal with the humanitarian crisis of homelessness. My experience will ensure that we can come through this COVID-19 crisis stronger and with much greater equity. I'm a small business owner. I'm a national leader in homeless advocacy. I'm a board member of the National Low Income Housing Coalition and founded the National Coalition to End Urban Indigenous Homelessness. For years, I have opposed sweeps in our homeless community, and I have been a fierce advocate for our folks who are experiencing homelessness. I've been a community police commissioner for 4 years and stood at the Community Police Commission and voted no on the Seattle Police Officers Guild Guide. Please take a moment to look at our website. It's been an honor to be with you today, and I look forward to getting to spend more time with you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Jessen?
I would just like to start by saying what an honor and privilege it has been to spend this afternoon with you. I really look forward to getting to be with you in person. I am so excited to ask for your support for Mayor of Seattle. This is a moment where we can be better and we must be so much better. This is a moment where we don't need more infighting, we need bridge building, where we do not need more words, we need actions, and where we need leaders who are not focused on our divides, but on solving problems. And that has been my focus throughout my career, whether it was as the executive director of Transportation Choices Coalition, as a state legislator for this community, working to bring money to the Lake City Community Center and bike and pedestrian improvements along Lake City Way. I want to be helping solve your problems, and I am committed to showing up and working with you to do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we'll go to Andrew.
Thank you for having me this evening or afternoon. I just want to end by saying that I am running specifically in this moment because of that last question, recognizing that we have less than 10 years to drastically reduce our carbon emissions and address the climate crisis. We are also dealing with a homelessness crisis and an affordability crisis. And so I believe it's not time for another career politician or lawyer. We have done that for the past 2 mayoral terms. And if we are going to be successful in the next 2, we need someone who is not just a project manager, who has managed multi-million-dollar budgets and brought them in on time and under budget. We need someone who has the lived experience and comes from community and has been lifted up by community. I am proud to say that I have the most democracy vouchers currently of any campaign, and I hope for your votes.
Thank you. We'll go to Lance.
Thank you. I want to say it's an honor to spend time with you this afternoon, this sunny Saturday. You give me a chance to answer your questions and respond to the issues. I want to commend all my colleagues for their participation and great ideas. It's always a pleasure to spend time with them. I'm running for mayor of Seattle because it's time for some new ideas and some new solutions to overcome the challenges that we're facing. We're still a wonderful city. We're going to come out of this situation stronger and better before. But in order to do that, we cannot go backwards as far as leadership. We cannot reward people who have been part of the problem. It's time to go forward with new leadership, with new ideas, and a new direction. I have the experience, the background, and a track record of work on the ground where I've worked all over the city, including in Lake City, helping small businesses, community organizations, large corporations, nonprofits, you name it. I have had an impact on the city. And as mayor, I will bring all those experiences to the table and be able to respond to the voters all over the city and meet the needs as the new mayor. So consider my platform very comprehensive, very detailed, and it can be done. We are Seattle, and we're going to come out of this fine with me as your new mayor, Lance Randall. Go to my website, www.lancerandall21.com.
Thank you, Lance. And Casey.
Yeah, I grew up in Seattle. I love the city. It's my hometown. We have a rich and sometimes complicated history, but when times have been tough, we've always found a way to come together to meet the moment, to innovate, to reject the status quo and build back better. We've never been a place where we throw up our hands and walk away because we know Seattle is worth fighting for. And we know from our own experience that positive change is possible. This is a critical moment for Seattle. We have an opportunity to rebuild a more equitable and just Seattle with vibrant, resilient neighborhoods, thriving small businesses, and an economy that works for every person in our city. Now is the time for us to find the strength in our diversity and come together to move Seattle forward.
15 seconds.
Thank you for your questions today. To learn more about me and my campaign, please go to Sixkiller4Seattle.com. I'll be working to earn your support and your vote, and I look forward to seeing you soon in Lake City. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you so much to all of the candidates. I just want to say how impressed I am that we are ending on time. Thank you so much for keeping your remarks brief, for spending your afternoon with us. It has been a pleasure to moderate this candidate forum. Before we leave, I just want to say again, thank you on behalf of the Democracy Vouchers Program, the Lake City Collective. It's been a pleasure. I want to remind folks that if you're not already registered to vote, you still have time. The deadline to get registered to vote is 8 days before the primary. It's an August 3rd primary, and we really hope you get registered. The links to get registered are going to be in the chat for you. Make sure on election day that your ballot is in the Dropbox spot before 8 p.m. There's also going to be a link in the chat so you can figure out which Dropbox is closest to you and plan your election day. And I think that's all I've got to say. Thank you. Anna, any last words from you?
Just good luck, everyone, and thank you all the candidates that showed up. Thank you, Lake City Way, for all your support and bringing this many of our diverse community together for this type of event. I'm sure this is the first one we've ever had and the first one that's probably ever been done. So we appreciate the work and effort that went into bringing this and making it possible. Thank you very much.
I will just say, last but not least, thank you to our interpreters, to both of our ASL interpreters, to our Spanish and Amharic interpreters. Hopefully we spoke at a relatively decent pace for you. Thank you all. Have a great evening.
Good night, everyone.